Hello Redditors, welcome back to Tales Against Humanity. Now, let's get started. In today's episode,
But they are so cute. A long time ago, I was on a contract job, doing desktop support for a fairly big company. I got pretty familiar with the good users and the bad users, and I placed a lot of machines for new hires. We had a pretty normal spec desktop for 90+% of the users, and then a workstation spec for power users. This was much more expensive, of course, and it required additional approval. So one day I placed a new desktop for a new hire. I could tell by the size and location of the cubicle that this was not a VIP, just a regular user. There were definite class lines. Higher ranks got nicer cubes, higher ranks still got offices. The work order said they got the standard workstation, so that's what I delivered. Got it all set up, working fine. Closed the ticket and moved on with my life. A couple of days later, I got a new ticket from a name I did not recognize. User states they are a new hire, and the machine performance is unacceptably slow, to the point that they are not able to do their work, and requesting the power user spec desktop. Based on the person's title, their work would have been using Word, Excel, and Outlook, and the standard machine was perfectly adequate for that workload, so something was definitely amiss. I contacted the user, and they said that they were not even able to open a simple Excel file in a reasonable time. I figured there might be something wrong with the Excel file, so I asked them to mail it to me. When it showed up, I was able to open it on my own standard spec machine with no issues. Not the file, then, something on the machine. I went to the user's desk. It was the same desk, and it was the same machine I mentioned earlier. The machine was running full tilt. The cooling fans were at full speed. I asked to sit and check out the machine, and it was immediately apparent that it was CPU bound. It had all the symptoms of a badly overworked machine. The only windows open were, as expected, Office apps. But there were also a bunch of little animated sheep roaming around on the desktop. Remember these, or rather the old 16-bit version of those? The user thought they were cute, and so had run a bunch of instances of the e-sheep, so they would have lots of them. I used the task mangler to kill all the sheep. The machine immediately returned to normal, the fans went back to idle, and the machine was suddenly completely usable. Word, Excel, and Outlook all snappy and working just fine. I advised the user not to run the e-sheep anymore, and that I would not be recommending her to get a power user machine. Story 2. The wild geese escaped. Please catch them. I build websites. I also support them, since my company doesn't have separate teams for development and support. I like it. Things are supported by people who understand thoroughly how they work. I get more variety in my job, and there's minimal red tape when it turns out that a support issue needs a dev fix. The other day I was assigned a support ticket for an e-commerce site. This site, like many, is integrated with their courier system to track packages after they have been shipped. But this hasn't been working for a while. Every package dispatched since then has error for its tracking information. So I poke around a bit. It's not hard to see the problem. Our logs are full of invalid password responses from the tracking API. I can see that the credentials the site is using are the same as the ones we have saved in our password manager, and neither has been updated recently. No biggie. Obviously, the client changed the password and forgot to tell us. I ping the ticket back to $client contact asking for the current credentials. $manager comes back to me the same day. $client contact replied, but the credentials he provided are the same as the ones in our password manager. Moreover, he knows they're correct because he's just used them to log in. Please. Can I investigate further? Wait, are we using the same credentials to access the API as the client is using to log into a web portal? No wonder something like this happened. I fire up Postman and make an identical request to one that's recently failed, using the known good credentials, invalid password. There is a discrepancy in case for the username, so maybe it's case sensitive. I try swapping it to lowercase, invalid username, so the username is definitely okay, and it's not just some default message. The password is wrong. I find the URL for the web portal and log in with the same credentials. All good. I get $manager to triple confirm that the password $client contact gave her is identical, and not just similar to the one we're using, specifically calling out letter case and one potentially ambiguous character. Wait, are we using the same credentials to access the API as the client is using to log into a web portal? I conclude that there's actually separate accounts for separate systems, but the credentials used to be identical, which someone probably thought would be convenient, but is actually confusing as heck. I shoot it back to $client contact again, asking do they have any other credentials anywhere, and if not, does he want to contact the courier for support or shall we? The next day, we get onto the courier's support line. We move them to our new service helpful, which doesn't support the tracking API, without telling them, and the error message for this is invalid password. We'll move them back. Great. Is the old service going to be switched off eventually? Not for a year. Is there a migration path? We're working on one. See y'all in a year for part 2, I guess. Story 3. I flip-flop the backwards wires on the left, while facing stage right from your left, while being upside down and sideways. One more time. Let's take it from the middle. I work in a fairly specialized industry, so I'll be intentionally vague on the product details. I'm on a small team of technicians with the role of supporting and training all the other technicians in the US. 80% of our job is troubleshooting over the phone. We don't usually venture out into the big scary world unless the engineers start clutching their slide rules and throwing around phrases like XK class end of the world scenario. One day I'm sitting at my desk, minding my own business, and doing absolutely nothing unexpected. Then I get a call from a technician we'll name Topsy-Turvy for reasons that will become apparent later. He's one of those technicians whose effectiveness comes from decades of trial and error experience and not any actual understanding of how products and components work. He also seems to find that listening to the words coming out of other people's mouths messes with his rhythm. He has a machine that will run fine except reverse displays as forward and forward displays as reverse. It's not a huge problem, but sensors and logs will think we are in a reality where Sir Isaac Newton smoked crack. This is a super easy problem to fix and only has 2 steps. Step 1. Swap any 2 3-phase wires to make the motor spin the correct direction. Step 2. Swap the 2 control wires so the sensors don't use inverted movement logic. If you do either step without the other, some motors will move when they should stay still, and others will stay still when you really want them to move. Topsy-Turvy understands step 1 because he can see motors spin the other way. In fact, he already tried it on his own. Step 2 is over his head and he decides to spend the next 5 minutes arguing with me about why that should be needed. I finally convince him to just do it. A few minutes later, he has smugly informed me that it didn't work. I may be blind while working over the phone, but I can still smell shit. We spent the next 15 minutes with me asking questions and receiving increasingly nonsensical answers, along with answers to questions I most certainly did not ask. I'll spare you the exchange, but I said or at least thought each of the following phrases more than once. I don't care what it was doing this morning. Which way did the motors move when you hit the button 5 seconds ago? The color of the control wires is irrelevant. Which way did the motors move when you hit the button 5 seconds ago? Do you mean you hit the forward button or the motors moves forward? Did the motors spin clockwise? If the motors move clockwise before shutting down, swap the control wires. Forward is clockwise. What do you mean? I don't understand. He finally gave up on trying to convince me I'm wrong and said he'd do it before hanging up. I'm 99% sure he did step 1 before calling, and then did step 1 again along with step 2 after talking to me. That would have the direction and logic out of sync with each other. I'm really glad techs like this are a minority in my line of work. Story 4. Would more internet fix this? PT.1. As many people do these days, I was working from home. Monitoring the network remotely is a strange thing. If something really bad goes down, will I be able to see it go down? Or will I waste time troubleshooting my end before I get a call about something being down? Anyways, the phone rings, I grab it and toss out a greeting, then frown. It's one of the management people I don't agree with on anything, at least in the past 17 years. Me. Hey MP, what can I do for you? MP. Hey, we're trying to have a board meeting and the internet is slow. I look at it's busy, but there should be enough bandwidth for them to have a board meeting. Unless. Me. How many people are meeting remotely today? MP. Well, it's me and 4 guys in the boardroom, and there are 17 people connecting remotely. 17 is a lot because we only have 8 board members. I bet he meant we're meeting in the boardroom. I look and I don't see anyone abusing the internet. I check the boardroom firewall and it's green across the board. Me. Well, we're pretty active on the internet, but I don't see anyone abusing their access. No one is doing anything I can just kill. What exactly is the problem you're experiencing? MP. It lags out when some people talk, and there is a delay when other people talk. Me. Do the remote people say we're having issues, or is it you guys in the boardroom noticing it about the remote attendees? MP. Let me ask. I triple-check no one is transferring a server backup, or pre-conversion file set, or anything else that eats a lot of bandwidth. I'm still unable to find anyone that I can boot off the firewall. MP. No, it's just on our side. They say we sound and look fine. Me. Well, it sounds like the problem is with a few of the attendees. Is that the case? Is it the same attendees that you're noticing the issues? MP. Yeah, it's the same 3-4 people, but it's real, making it hard to meet. Me. I don't think I can do anything. I imagine the connection issue is on their end. If it was our end, it would be happening to more people, both incoming and outgoing. MP. Incoming and outgoing, no one is leaving. What do you mean? Me. When one of them talks or moves, we have incoming data. When one of you talk, we have outgoing data. MP. Oh, okay, so would more internet fix this? Me. Doubtful. It would help, but it wouldn't fix this issue. MP. Well, I need this issue fixed. Click enter a contact log and go back to watching progress bars from home in a recliner, wearing pajamas and fuzzy slippers.